is an everlasting dominion,
Amen.
which shall not pass away.
Amen.
So we know this Ben Adam, this Bar Enosh, is the eternal Word of Yahweh that became the Son of Yahweh when he was clothed in his own flesh. And this Bar Enosh has the dominion, and his dominion is an everlasting dominion which will never pass away, and his Malchut, his kingdom, shall never be destroyed. Now, clearly in reference to the Son of Man, or Bar Enosh, or Ben Adam, the very term that you thought would get Rabbi Moshe to admit that he's been wrong, the very term, oh, it's so quiet, I can just nail a demon right out in the open. Lying demons. I could just nail him out in the open and hear him die a slow death. Listen to this. The scripture that many folks thought proves that he had human flesh is just the opposite. This here, Daniel 7:13-14, is a clear reference not to his alleged humanity or alleged human nature, giving Yeshua a supposed dual nature, a nature of Yahweh and a nature of man. If he had a dual nature, he had a dual will. If he had a dual will, he had a dual desire. If he had a dual desire, he could not do the will of the Father. He said, I always do your will, meaning I always do your desire, because I have your nature and none of Mordecai's and none of Moshe's and none of anybody. I don't have that nature to deal with.
Yeah, come on. Amen. Amen.
But he came like a man, he was fashioned like a man, he looked like a man, he walked like a man, but he didn't have the dust origin of a man.
Amen. Amen.
Todah rabah Yahweh.
That's good.
Now watch this. In Scripture, Daniel 7:13-14 are known as the principle, listen, of first usage. The principle of first usage. The first place this term appears is right here in Daniel. Does that make a difference? Yes. Because every other place it appears, we must gauge, not gouge, we must gauge the latter usage based on the initial usage of the term in Scripture. Make sense?
Makes sense.
We can't start with the Brit Hadashah and say it means a human being and ignore the first time Yahweh lays out the foundation of what that term means. The first time he lays out the foundation is in Daniel 7:13. The Son of Man is eternal. The Son of Man has a kingdom that will never end. The Son of Man has a authority and a dominion that will never be destroyed. And he is eternal, and he existed in the days of Daniel. This Son of Man existed in the days of Daniel.
Amen. Amen.
As the Son of Man. Did that make him a human being?
No.
Vincent, did that make him a human being? He existed as the Son of Man in the days of Daniel. We see here just the opposite. He was the Word of Yahweh, the Son of Man, the Bar Enosh. This is the first time this term is used of Mashiach in the Scriptures. There are other times it is used, as I mentioned, of humanity in general, or of a human being in specific, such as Ezekiel, as I mentioned, whom Yahweh calls the Son of Man. So what determines if it's talking about a man or talking about Yahweh himself, the Word of Yahweh? Context, context, context. What are the three cardinal principal rules of real estate? Location, location, location.
Yes.
What are the three cardinal rules of kingdom living? Endure, endure, endure.
Amen.
If everyone leaves, and if everyone leaves Yeshua, and everyone denies Yeshua, and blah, 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 endure, endure, endure. Real estate, location, location, location. In Scripture, it's first mention, first mention, first mention. First mention, first mention, first mention. Because later mentions cannot contradict the primary mention. Todah Rabah Yahweh. Go ahead and be quiet, see if I care.
That's all right, I'm back. Be straight.
My mortgage is paid. Our rent is paid.
All right.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
All right.
So context determines, is it referring to Ezekiel, a man? Is it referring to the human race? Or is it referring to Yeshua as Yahweh before he came to earth? Context, context, context.
Number 3.
Right, Mordecai? Context, context,
And context.
context.
Okay. Gotcha.
The first time Son of Man is used prophetically and eschatologically is right here in the book of Daniel. All other first covenant references to a Son of Man are irrelevant. Did you hear what I said, Abraham? All other mentions of Son of Man in the first covenant relating to anybody is irrelevant, because the first time that term is used of Yahweh, it is used of him as the eternal, the immortal, the invisible, who comes to the Ancient of Days, who has dominion and authority and a kingdom that shall never end.
Ancient days.
That's the first time it is applied in the context of a heavenly being.
Yes.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Hashem Yahweh.
Matter of fact, this is the only time in the Tanakh when Ben Adam or Bar Enosh is applied to Yahweh, the Messiah, in the first covenant. Now, many times in the Brit Chadashah or the renewed covenant, we see Yeshua coming, and not only being called Ben Adam. Well, actually, the funny thing is, I don't think, and I may be wrong, there's a first time for everything. I don't recall anybody calling Yeshua Ben Adam. I remember that most times Yeshua refers to himself as the Ben Adam. I may be wrong, like I said, that's a possibility. But I don't recall people, they said Ben David. I remember the blind Bartimaeus, the blind beggar, saying Ben David. I remember that. But I don't remember anybody calling Yeshua Son of Man. What's most interesting is only Yeshua called Yeshua Son of Man. I find that interesting. Amen?
Yeah.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh. So you see, the argument goes, oh, because he loved Marvin so much, and he looked like Marvin, and he had a nose, and he had ears, and he had a bald head like Moshe. He looked so much like us that he wanted to identify with us, so he kept referring to himself as with his human identity rather than his identity. You know what I got to say to that? Palogna. Cuban cigars. That's what I have to say. That makes as much sense as Cuban cigars. That Yeshua smoked Cuban cigars. How many believe Yeshua smoked Cuban cigars? Can I see your hand, please?
Don't think so.
I don't think so. Wrong time and place.
Put the hand up there.
Wrong time and place. Well, but Yeshua obviously referred to himself as Ben Adam, Bar Enosh, many times. Turn to your neighbor and say many times.
Many times.
By now, the answer should be obvious. This term, Ben Adam, or Bar Enosh, is a reference to the book of Daniel and his deity based on the only time it is used in the Tanakh when referring to a heavenly being. And Yeshua said over and over again, I came down from heaven not to do my will, but the will of him who sent me.
Yes. Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
The only time it is used to refer to a heavenly being is Bar Enosh, one time. And Yeshua claimed not to be from the earth. He said, you are of the earth. You are from below. I am not from below. I am from above. And what if you see the Son of Man go back to where he was before? Will you believe then? That's a rhetorical question. We won't believe then either, Yeshua. So he says, I don't have a sin problem like you do. You have an unbelief problem. Your problem is unbelief. So this term is a reference, notice, to the only time it is used in the Tanakh, the book of Daniel. Yeshua is clearly